Well, welcome to Valley Hoops Insider Podcast, part of the Valley Hoops Insider website. I'm Harry Schrader. Glad to be with you today. And today we've got a great opportunity to hang out with an old friend and a great college basketball player, Marcus Wilson. I think fourth all-time and leading scorer at the University of Evansville, over 2,000 points. Terrific NCAA experience in the NCAA tournament, played professionally, has coached at the Division I level. Now he's doing some other kinds of work in scouting and all those other kinds of important things that really are the lifeblood of college basketball and pro basketball. And we're excited to have with us today our old friend, Marcus Wilson. Marcus, welcome. I'm used to you living in St. Louis, and then I'm used to you being gone in Evansville, and now you're not in either of those places. Tell us where we find you today.
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now. Moved down here to do my job better. Also, my kid, John Bowl, moved down here and just to be closer to him and navigate him through his last year in high school. And so, here in Atlanta, Georgia, trying to make it happen.
2,053 points at the University of Evansville, and you left Craig Snow behind to still be an assistant there at Evansville. I think he's 10th on the list. Take me back to Evansville basketball days when you were a player. There were some heady times for the Purple Aces when you were there.
Yeah, actually, I just talked to Craig about it today. It was just, I learned a lot during my time there that has helped me in life. The sleeves. Even though most people just
come on, brother.
T-shirts, the sleeves to me, I literally just had this conversation a couple hours ago this morning, but the sleeves to me represented more than just T-shirts. Like the sleeves represented toughness. It represented accountability. It represented being prepared. And most importantly, I think sometimes it's just like we knew that we were the underdog. We were the smaller dog in the fight. One of the smallest enrollments in Division I basketball. And, times when we play, like, for example, IU in Madison Square Garden, they have so much more endowment and 40,000 students. We have 2,500. But the sleeves meant like, hey, you know what? We're the smaller dog in the fight, but you're gonna come out of here with some scratches because we're gonna scrap and we're gonna claw and we're gonna fight. And it doesn't matter about how big the school is. We're gonna be the most prepared, the most hungry, the hardest working team. And we did that a lot, and that's what led to a championship my senior year. But that's some of the same things that I've tried to carry on into my life now in terms of just being prepared, being accountable, working hard, and knowing that there's other people that have more resources or more connections than me. But I'm still going to give it my best, and I learned a lot of that at Evansville.
Great collegiate basketball player, played professionally a long time as well. Maybe the individual highlight was your game against Kansas in the NCAA tournament. Just take us back. Give us a couple of minutes about that day. I know it's special to you and special to Valley fans.
Yeah, it's obviously a great day. I think my favorite was my senior day when we won the championship at home against what was then Southwest Missouri State, which is now Missouri State. But, that was a epic moment for me to be able to make a shot to win the game, to win conference at home in front of all my friends and family and win a championship at Robert Stadium. That's my number one. But Kansas is a very close second, or maybe 1A or 1B. It was the same thing as what I just said. I remember when we were in the basement of Coach's basement, waiting to see if we were going to get in because we had lost in the conference championship game. They pulled up number 6 Kansas, number 11 Evansville, and just immediately, my mind shifted to, hey, I know that Kansas is going to be on the front of their jersey, and they're a blue blood. They have all these national championships, and but we were going to go in there and compete. I thought we were going in there. We were going in there to win. I had my mindset of winning. And, it was just a lot of preparation. I studied the film. I studied to see how they defended guys coming off of screens. We knew what plays they were going to run. We knew how they were going to defend a lot of things. And so, getting off to a good start and making my first few shots, obviously got some of the jitters out, and I was able to get hot pretty quickly. But, it was just an awesome experience. The people that were calling the game, Bonnie Bernstein was there, all of the big guys. What's his name? Billy Packard was calling the game. It was as high level as you can get. And so to be able to play in the NCAA tournament and be able to experience that against a blue blood, and obviously we fell up short, but just a great experience to be able to compete against people at that level.
And you played professionally for a long time, came back to the States, and you've done a number of different things. But what has been consistent in your life? A number of things, but one of them is your not-for-profit work, and I really appreciate what you do in that arena. Tell folks what you're up to in that regard. We'll talk more basketball stuff in a minute.
Yeah, so I run my own nonprofit. It's called Nurturing Potential International. I kind of came up with the philosophy that, a lot of these kids, they have the potential. It's like a seed. And I use this analogy all the time. A seed has everything that it needs inside of it to grow. However, it's still going to need sunlight. It's still going to need water. It's still going to need cultivation. It's still going to need someone to look after it to help it sprout and reach its full potential. That's how I view these kids. Even though they might come from an impoverished background, they might have whatever strikes against them in the past. I think that if you give them nurturing, you give them care, you give them an opportunity to have a great education, and you give them just an opportunity to flourish and give them a strong environment around them, I think that you would see more kids thriving. And so that's what nurturing potential is, nurturing the potential of these kids. And so primarily how we started off was I wanted to make sure that kids were getting an education. And it started in Africa because I knew I was going to be recruiting in Africa. I really wanted to invest in the kids that were there. I didn't want to be known as someone that was just going to Africa, getting kids. A lot of guys in this game, that's what they do. Like, oh, I saw this video of this kid. Let's bring them here. You don't know anything about them. You don't know anything about their family. You're not investing into the area that you took them from, but you're taking one of the more talented kids from a region that needs as much help as it can right now. And so the first year of existence was all just academic scholarship work. I raised the money. We found kids that when they're graduating, when they're finishing middle school, who are at the top of their class, but for whatever reason, they're probably not going to be able to go to a good high school. They might be able to go to a public school that is not very good, but to be able to go to a high-level educational institution that they should be able to go to because they're at the top of their class coming out of middle school, I wanted them to be able to continue their education at that level. So we take the kids who are doing very well in school, pay for their education for 4 years in high school at a private school where they can get the best education. And we did that. That was the first probably year and a half of existence. Then I knew that there were kids there that were really talented and that I wanted to recruit and wanted to bring them here on academic scholarships. So even though I'm recruiting the basketball players here, they still are coming here on academic scholarship. So it's all academic based. And and so we started with that. John Bo, who is my adopted son, was the second kid that I really brought here. And it's a whole nother story about how I ended up adopting him. If we want to get into that, we can. But initially, it was just he was coming here to play ball. He was going to school. And, and so that's what we do is we create opportunities for these kids to get academic scholarships here. Meanwhile, helping kids there. So to date, we just did a tally at the end of the year. We've assisted 285 kids. A lot of them, the majority of them, 270 are back in their native countries. I've helped several kids come to the United States in this time as well. John being one of them. Simon Guy, who's a powerhouse in St. Louis right now with Vianney, another one of the kids I helped bring over. And so, yeah, man, just really proud of what we're doing and giving kids an opportunity to be their best selves,
I just want to put this in perspective. I've been to Africa so many different times now, and schools there, you said, well, I help them get into private schools because the public schools aren't that great. People in America, like I'm a public school guy here, and I'm like, hold the phone, buddy.
Yeah.
In some of those countries in Africa and some other nations as well, the public schools are kind of just barely getting by, and the teachers are maybe not as trained, and the facilities are not as good. The resources are not as good. And so it's dramatically different in the country that I've been to routinely. It's night and day different. And the education that those young people are getting is not anywhere near what they're getting in that private school. So I don't want the public school apologists here in America to get all up in arms like that Marcus Wilson's stealing the kids from the public school. That's not it at all. He's actually helping them get a really, really good education.
That's not it at all. My son goes to public school in St. Louis, right? We live in the Olivet Ladue area and considered putting him at like a CBC or a Chaminade or whatever. But, I personally think that you learn as much outside of the classroom as you do in the classroom when you go to school, whether it's high school or college. I can't remember the last time I had to use, some of the theories that I learned or like the periodic chart in school, but I did learn in school how to get along with people with different backgrounds and all different races and things. And that's what I think public school offers. And I'm a big advocate of that. But like you said, in some of the schools in Africa where these kids were going to go, it was going to be such a poor level of education. And considering that they had already tested very high for their level, I just believe that these kids need to continue to get the opportunity to continue to strive to be one of the best in their class and get a high level education if they're capable and if they have the desire to, which those are the kids that we try to identify.
Spectacular. And because of your passion for basketball as well, in that process, you do find talented basketball players and help them make the move here. And so it's not like you're doing one or the other. You're doing both of those things. But the not-for-profit part of that, I think, is so profound. And I really deeply appreciate what you're doing there, because part of what we're doing in Africa is helping kids in school. I'm doing the exact same thing in a different way, in different ways. So I just love your philosophy and all of that. Tell us a little bit about John, because people know about him, at least basketball junkies do. Give us the latest on John Bull.
So it was a big week last week. He was just named a McDonald's All-American.
Come on.
That's phenomenal, considering where he came from, and not like impoverished background. He really didn't. He had a pretty solid upbringing. But he had only been playing basketball for 9 months when he arrived to my home, March 7th, 2021.
Wow.
And so for me, one of the things that I've always thought that I was really good at, like you mentioned, I've coached and I have some talents in some other areas. But I personally think my two best qualities is I think I'm a really good recruiter. And I think I'm a good developer of talent on and off the court. And that's why I decided to hone in and focus on this. As a college coach, you have to do so much more than that. Scouts, all this other stuff, coaching. I like identifying the talent, which I think I did a pretty good job of that while I was at Evansville. And but like with John, I had watched, this is what's crazy. I had watched 2 basketball clips of him. One was 9 seconds, and one I believe was like 22 seconds.
You knew everything you needed to know.
31 seconds, and it wasn't just because he's tall. There's hundreds. I told him this when he came here. There are literally hundreds of 7-foot African kids that come here every year from Mali, Senegal, Nigeria, South Sudan, Congo, Uganda. Like you said, people it seems to be the cool thing now to recruit internationally now, right? But it was just something that I saw in his footwork, how quickly he got off the ground. And then, one of the other things that I do is once I identify kids, they generally live with, I have a couple workers over there, scouts and guys. And so that's another thing that my nonprofit does is we provide housing for kids. Now, John wasn't one of the kids we provided housing for, but he was working with my scout. And so as we try to get the kid an I-20, which is basically an international student visa to be able to come to America and stay here, as we were going through that process, I have my scout really just try to spend as much time with the kid as possible if they're living with him or even if they're not, because I don't want to bring a kid over here who's going to be a bad student, who's going to be a bad person, who's going to jeopardize the nonprofit or the opportunities for any other kids afterwards. So all the kids that I bring here, I've had a relationship with them for 6 to 8 months. And so there's kids that I've had to stop halfway through the process and say, hey, this isn't going to work. There's probably the most talented kid that I ever discovered over there. He cussed out a coach once. He was living with the host family, started coming home late. The host family asked him to stop doing that. He was rebelling. And I'm like, no, we're not doing it. I think this kid was an NBA level player, but it just wasn't worth what we were trying to do for the multitude of kids I think could have the opportunity afterwards for one kid to come and ruin that. And so I saw the video on John. I loved his work ethic. He spoke 5 languages, was extremely intelligent. And I just felt like there were enough intangibles here. And I knew that if I lived with him and I worked with him, that I thought that I could make him I knew I could make him a high major player. Like getting to a high major school I knew that was going to be the easy part. But now we're trying to Well, now he's just with McDonald's All-American, so top
Sure.
24 players in the country. And now we're trying to take it to the next level of being successful in college and then hopefully to the NBA.
At some point, he signed with Florida, or is he signed with Florida? Do I have that correct?
Yeah. So, man, this is, I haven't talked about this story much. So the reason why John signed at Florida or verbally committed to Florida,
Sure.
was after I left Evansville, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I had some connections with some other top 25 players. And I got into talks with University of Florida. And John had been telling some coaches, like, I would love to play for Marcus if possible. So some schools were talking to me about possibly creating a position.
Wait, does that happen?
Yeah. And some were saying possibly, some were saying they couldn't because, obviously no one's going to fire someone to hire me, and so I get that. But they did, this year they had just started a new rule where you can add 2 more assistants to the staff. And so between John and some of the other prospects that I had access to, that when they found out that I was going to join the staff, there were, I'm not going to name names, but there were 3 other top 25 players in the country over multiple classes that had already set up visits. Well, went down there, and then for one reason or another, we just figured out that this wasn't going to be the best fit for, I figured out it wasn't going to be the best fit for me. And so before my first day even started, I said, hey, coach, this isn't going to work. I'm pulling out. John said, hey, only reason I'm going there was because you were going there. So if you're not going to coach there, I'm decommitting. So he decommitted the same day. And then he had this was right before the Peace Jam. So then he had a really good Peace Jam. And the way he ended up at Ole Miss was because 2 coaches who had already been recruiting him over the last year both landed at Ole Miss. So Chris Beard was recruiting him heavily at Texas. And he had already developed a great relationship with Coach Beard and Coach Rodney Terry down there. Texas Tech, a lot of people don't know, Texas Tech was his number 1 school for a very long time until Coach Adams got fired. If Coach Adams doesn't get fired, I think John ends up at Texas Tech. But when they got fired, Coach Al Pinkins from that staff also went to Ole Miss. And so since John had already had a great relationship with Coach Beard, who is now the head coach at Ole Miss, Coach Pinkins was then hired as the associate head coach. And I'm a big believer in kids going to schools where the head coach and associate head coach are all bought in on you. Too many times I see the third assistant recruiting the kid. The head coach isn't really bought in. And so he never really gets a full opportunity like the kid that the head coach really wanted or that he recruited. So considering the head coach and associate head both were really bought into John, already had a great relationship with him. I had that relationship with him. We went on a visit. He loved all his teammates, had a great time, and committed on the spot.
It's amazing how these things happen. It's about relationship, isn't it? I don't want you to pontificate about that, but it's all about relationship. I trust you. I can see that we're going to jive together. I mean, it's all about that. I was going to ask you, I mean, you already touched on it, but I was going to ask you about coaching versus coaching. What I mean is that official thing that you were doing at Evansville and used to do at St. Louis U, you're not doing that, but there's a lot of this life character as well as basketball coaching that really, that's what makes your heart beat faster, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, I truly believe that's my passion. That's why I committed. I finally bet on myself in life. What I mean by that is, like, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help kids. If you look at my history from the time I finished playing professional basketball, I was an operational director at Chick-fil-A, where I hired a bunch of 16 to 24-year-olds. Then I went and coached at St. Louis University, a bunch of youth. Then I was an executive director at the YMCA, the youth. Then coached at Evansville. And so that's just been my passion, to help mentor and coach youth, basketball and in life. And I truly believe this, and I think John does as well, that one of the reasons, I mean, he's a phenomenal talent. Let's not get it mistaken. He's 7'2" and moves like a deer, and it has an incredible amount of just individual talent. Then, you add that with a guy like myself who played ball, coached, and can train him on a day-to-day basis. But the third thing, I think, and we talk about this all the time, it wasn't who I had him around, it was who I kept him away from. And some of the things that I kept him away from. Too many kids are so entitled these days. American kids are much more entitled than international kids.
Sure.
You might give an American kid a pair of shoes a $200 pair of shoes, and he might be, I don't want those. I want the Kobe's, or I want a different color. You know, you give an international kid something like that, and they are going to cherish it. And so keeping John away from, I see so many kids start feeling like they're better than what they are. You know, they get ranked or they have a couple good games, and then the coaches and all the fans are telling them, oh, you're a pro. Oh, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do this or that. You know, you're going to be okay. You know, just no, like John still had chores around the house. He still, you know, I kept him away from the people that told him how good he was, because he wasn't yet. And just developing that character and that work ethic, you know, I think he takes pride in being the hardest working big man in America. I think a lot of coaches say that he's the hardest playing big they've seen in a while. That doesn't just happen by accident. And some of that's natural within him. Some of that is what I've helped cultivate in him. And I think that's what I do really well in terms of player development and personal development. Like you mentioned, the coaching side of it. I love to do it. And I think I have a talent at doing that.